devant Bobet et Ockers, Gino Bartali.
5 minutes de retard pour Bernard Hinault, il n'a plus que 25 secondes d'avance.
Regardez bien Jacques Anquetil. Il roule solitaire sur la route.
Pour 8 secondes, Laurent Fignon a perdu le Tour de France.
Coppi est seul et termine premier.
Héros du jour, ça va être Ituren. Quel exploit athlétique!
Bravo Merckx! Bravo Merckx! C'est un seigneur!
From June the 29th, Corsica will host the Tour de France Grand Départ for 3 days. It's the first time in history that the Tour has been launched from here. For the first stage, we go from south to north, with Porto-Vecchio to Bastia, 212 kilometres. Then north to south with the second stage, Bastia-Ajaccio, and stage 3, Ajaccio to Calvi, 145 kilometres. Christian Prudhomme says there's a real desire to do something really new for the Grand Départ, which can be spectacular, and Corsica lend itself perfectly. As we wished, it will be a brand new start. It will be aesthetic, because they don't know Corsica will understand why we give it the name Island of Beauty. It's splendid, and the course is sporting, with the first stage tailor-made for sprinters, and for the first time since 1967, that is, and the creation of the prologue at that time. On paper, there's a need for a great fight. I can't imagine that in Calvi we'll have more than 70 riders maximum in the peloton at the finish. I dream about the possibility it could be fewer than that. I dream also about one of the favourites who could maybe be trapped behind, because clearly the second and most especially the third stages are trap stages. The men could be trapped in the back of the peloton. But organisers offer, and riders and their managers decide, we have to build what we want to do, and that I think we've done for sure. This already famous third stage will be 154k from Ajaccio and Calvi, and the course will be a perfect example of what Corsican roads are made of. In the cycling world, a lot of sports directors are quite concerned about it because, as we had with the Passage du Goin de Vendée a few years ago, trouble can happen. It'll be quite a tonic for us all. I say ironically, this is the least we can say. It'll be wonderful. The first stage is not that complicated, but the two next ones are more difficult, and that'll add stress for all the teams. I think that most of them did a reconnaissance of the course, and we know that we'll not win the Tour de France in Corsica, but we know that there's a strong possibility that we can lose it, because with a mechanical problem, a crash, a puncture, we're sure to have some kind of problem, and of course we've got to help our riders the best that we can. Well, as you can see on these pictures, there were crashes on last year's Tour, as ever, crashes which happened from the start of the race and right until the end. To win the Tour means to be aware every day of everything, to focus more than 100% on every detail. Here's Valerio Piva, sports director of Katusha, that's Joaquim Rodriguez's team. The Tour has to be won every day, and yet it can be lost in one moment. We need to be attentive in all the stages, and attentive of the weather elements, the wind, there can be crashes. You have to ride always as near to the front as possible. You need to have a team that helps you and supports you all the time. My advice, if you aim for the general classification on the Tour, is to be every day, every moment in the right place. It costs a lot of energy, especially mentally, and this is often the most important difficulty of the Tour. Well, after Corsica, the Tour de France has a team time trial in Nice, which was not on the Tour last year, and later on a few stages in which we also could have strong animation. This is Patrick Lefevre of Omega Pharma Quickstep. On some stages it could be dangerous. I think about stages when we've got strong winds. We're a team who can make breaks. We've nothing to defend on the general classification, so if we have the possibility to make the Tour de France explode from one moment to another, we will not hesitate. To summarise, after Corsica, the pressure will stay for 4 stages, and right after the Pyrenees come, and so to the first top mountain finish. For the Italian climber Damiano Cunego, the Tour de France is always a difficult race. Yes, the route is hard. Tour de France every year features very selective stages. Also in 2011, when I finished 6th, it was very selective, and there were lots of mountain stages then. After a rest day and a long transfer from Bagnères de Bigorre to Saint-Nazaire, the second part of the Tour will be more classical, with some flat stages and a time trial for the rouleurs. Here's Sylvain Chavanel. I can find my place, and my role is very important within the team. Do not forget, we've got the world's best sprinter with Mark Cavendish to win some stages, as he did recently on the Giro. But as soon as there are some hillier flat stages, I will try. You won't see me attacking, though, on the stages that we promise to Mark. The world best sprinter Mark Cavendish has already had 11 victories this year so far, including the team time trial in Tirreno Adriatico, and among these 5 on the Giro. He started his wins in January in Argentina. It means that for the green jersey battle, he'll be ready. But so also will he be his great rival, Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan has 12 victories to date, gained the green jersey classification last year, and he thinks that the fight for the green will start from the very first stage and won't stop until the very end. The first stages will be key. It'll be important to start well. The battle for the green jersey starts from the very first stages. Then we'll see during the Tour how the other teams move. It won't be only about Cavendish and myself. The Tour de France can often reveal surprise riders. It's difficult to say who, but there are bound to be others who come in the mix, apart from me and Mark Cavendish, of course. So to gain another green jersey is the main goal of Peter Sagan, but it's not the only one, as he wants stage victories, and especially one of them, the last one in Paris. Last year on the Champs-Élysées, I was badly placed towards the finish. Winning in Paris is without doubt a goal for me. In Paris, it's after 21 stages, 3 weeks, everybody's tired, and that could be an advantage for me. It'll be a short and flat stage, but after 21 days of racing, I think that I should be in a position to compete with whoever is remaining amongst the main sprinters. Well, Cavendish or Sagan, nobody knows. But don't forget, riders like Andre Greipel, 3 times the fastest on the Tour last year, or Matt Goss perhaps, they'll also be going for stage victories. Before winning in Paris, it'll be a long way for all the riders. The course will move from the west side of France to the mid-southeast. On the way to the Alps, there'll be the return of the so-called Giant of Provence, Mont Ventoux. This, of course, is part of the history of the Tour de France, with some good and bad memories, like Tom Simpson's tragic death in 1967. Joaquim Rodriguez says the Tour de France profile is quite suited to climbers, at least for the moment, as far as pre-race commentaries. This year, the Tour de France, as the Giro, is more suited to us, the climbers. At least, let's hope it'll be the case. Will Rodriguez make it this year? The first time he went on the Tour 3 years ago, he was 7th in Paris, and he had a stage victory in Mantes. This year is his 2nd participation in the Tour. The last week will be totally different from what we've had in the past. Everything's been done to preserve as much as it's possible a kind of suspense for those final days. Clearly, like last year, but maybe more this year, there's the chance to get suspense until the end. That's why the last time trial will take place on the Wednesday, which is more than rare. And then 3 more mountain stages in a row before Paris on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. A sandwich of high-altitude finishes with a slice of ham, which is a traditional long alpine stage, finishing at Le Grand Bonnat in between Alpe d'Huez 2 times and Annecy-Semneaux. So everything is in place to get a great show. Climbers with a gap to fill on rouleur, and thinking I've got 3 stages to reduce the gap. Well, the 18th stage should be one of the greatest moments of the 100th Tour de France. A finish at Alpe d'Huez is always a success, with a lot of people on the 21 hairpins. But as the French say, quand on mène, on ne compte pas. When you love, you don't count. There'll be 2 climbs of Alpe d'Huez, and in between, and for the first time, the Col de Sarenne. Some say that this stage has been built for the press. A response from Christian Prudhomme, and right after, reaction of the riders. Yes, this is a real aspect with it, the most telegenic climb of the Tour. The history of the Alpe d'Huez is Tour de France history, the climb with its 21 hairpins, which will do this year twice, 42 hairpins. To climb Alpe d'Huez once is already very hard. Climbing it twice is 2 times harder. The speed of the race will determine everything. If we go over to medium pace with the breakaway already in front, it would be one thing. But if it's climbed from the beginning at high pace, it can be really an extremely demanding stage. The Alpe d'Huez is not a climb that you can ride quietly. It's just impossible. Something will happen from the first climb, so it means, I think, one difficulty more. Very, very important for all of us. Climbing it twice, and after 2 weeks of racing, it's going to be a key day, a decisive climb. We'll need to see what will be by then the situation in the general classification. I really hope that it'll be a good day for me.
Winning at Alpe
d'Huez always means something. Yellow jersey at the Alpe d'Huez 3 days before Paris, that'll be important too, even if there are 2 mountain stages still to come. I hope that we'll have a great fight as Alpe d'Huez can ever offer us. Well, if Christian Prudhomme and ASO wishes are respected, we'll know the name of the Tour de France winner after the last mountain stage and its finish at altitude in Annecy-Semno. The day after, riders will change their bike for a plane to reach Paris and the last stage of this 100th Tour de France. Versailles to the Champs-Élysées with the very first time a finish at sunset.
Boilers on its last legs, and the memory of last winter still sends shivers down your spine. Well, we can replace your boiler for a nice new energy-efficient one. We'll do a lovely clean job and trade in your old boiler now to get £300 off any new one we install. Plus, you could claim up to £270 with Green Deal government cashback. For a great new boiler with quality service, just call 0800 980 8182.
Your turn.
The new Jaguar F-Type. Your turn.
Welcome back. 2 leaders for 1 place. With Cadel Evans and TJ Van Garderen, the BMC team has 2 riders who can be important contenders for the GC. Evans, the winner in 2011, did a good Giro with a 3rd overall place. Van Garderen was brilliant on the US roads, winning the Tour of California. TJ was 5th in Paris last year, whilst Cadel was only 7th. Team manager said Cadel will be the captain and TJ the lieutenant.
We'll have to see how the race plays out, but I mean, it's a Tour. Right now, you kind of just have to focus on what's going to happen on the first week of the Tour, because it can always be so nervous. You always see guys who are top 10 contenders who lose minutes in the first week. Last year I showed that I have the potential to be a good Grand Tour rider, and I think everyone's question once somebody gets a good result in the Grand Tour is, can he do it again? Is he reliable to do it year after year? And so that's a question that I hopefully want to answer, and yeah, I'm motivated to do it.
Well, the Spanish cycling is one of the best, but last year on the Tour, only 2 stage victories for it, including one for this guy, Alessandro Valverde. On the Tour, he's already won 4 stages and worn the yellow jersey, but only for 2 days, 2008. He wants more of it. It means he's looking for the GC. I've already won a stage on the Tour. I've already been a leader in the race. My ambition, my dream now is to finish on the podium, to be among the top 3. If I win a stage, yeah, it'll be great, but that won't be enough for me this year. I want the podium. I need to race differently. I need to race more at the front. The first week will be a very decisive week. We'll need all the team to race at the front and not to underestimate any details. If we can manage all of that, then yes, I think my form is good enough and we have a very good chance of getting me right up there. This year, Alberto Contador will be back on the Tour of France. Last year on the Vuelta, you had a great fight against each other. Is that what you're thinking about for this Tour? Well, I think Alberto was in great shape last year on the Vuelta, and I managed to battle with him for the general classification. I think on the Tour I can again compete against him. If he's able to win the Tour de France, and I could be alongside him competing against him, maybe if not to win, at least to make the podium, that'll be fine. Well, this year with the start in Corsica, I think it'll be a different race, very complicated, narrow roads, more than ever. The placement in front will be key. It'll be even more demanding than usual for the team, but if we want to avoid crashes and time-losing situations, we've got to concentrate on that right from the very beginning. Well, last year there was a big domination from Team Sky. What do you think needs to be done to change that this time around? Well, Sky showed themselves to be a great team with a very strong squad. Last year they dominated with unbelievable authority. I think this year Sky will be a good team, but I don't think maybe as good as they were last year. Last year, Wiggins, Froome, Port, Rogers, they were just unbelievable. Maybe all of them in their best shape of their lives. This year, yes, they have a strong team, but I think this year that we have more opportunities to put them in trouble, and we shall be watching out for opportunities to do that as often as we possibly can. Well, to be at the top means sometimes to be lucky not to be involved in a crash. Is there a stage where he thinks he could lose the Tour de France? Well, you can lose the Tour de France in any stage, the first, the second, the third day, any day. To win it, you can win it any day. Look at last year on the Vuelta, the stage that none was expecting major things. Alberto caught the leadership in a stage none was expecting much to happen. And this year on the Tour de France, even a middle mountain stage could perhaps be the key and do more damage than any other stages. I hope this year I can have the chance not to be involved in any crash, and that this good luck can be with me throughout the whole Tour, and that I will be a main protagonist on this Tour. I certainly believe I have the form, and I'm coming to the peak of my form just at the right time. I just need that little bit of luck. Alessandro wants to be on the final podium of the Tour de France, but with whom? Any idea? Oh, I want to be on the podium. Alongside whom? Well, it would be all the same for me. If I'm on the podium, in the middle, on the top, that's a lot better, of course, but I'd be happy for any of the 3 podium positions. Who I wish to have alongside me? It would be the same whoever it is. I'll congratulate them. Now, will Andy Schleck be able to be one of the main contenders for the GC on this Tour? According to him, no, but could it be a chance for him?
I'm not on the list for winning the Tour. We see really strong Froome, Contador. The guys, they announced that they want to win, so they also have to show and take responsibility in the race, and then we see it's 3 weeks, so it can change everything, every day, everything, and I don't go in as the favorite, and I like the position.
Having been on the Tour of California with him, I saw that Andy is getting better. I didn't do any races with him in March, April, but after 15 days with him, I saw he did some good training. He tried to escape sometimes. He will be ready for the Tour. A good point for Andy this year is that the last week's very hard, and in the past, Andy showed he's never very good at the start of the Tour, but he seems to come more strong in the 3rd week. So we believe that we can count on that when the other riders maybe are getting a little bit tired.
Donc, je pense qu'il peut compter là-dessus, quoi.
So will we see Andy on the top this year? Maybe the 2010 Tour de France winner himself doesn't know the answer, but not to be at the top rank list could definitely be an advantage for him. Little pressure on him.
There's excitement in the air in Corsica. The big tour starts this weekend, and just ahead of it, the presentation of the 22 teams taking part in this, the 100th edition of the world's greatest cycle race. The Tour de France team presentation this afternoon at 5:45 live on British Eurosport.
Now, the team presentation coming up very soon, but this year, Team Sky and their leader, Chris Froome. The 28-year-old rider's already won the Tour of Oman, the Criterium International, Tour of Romandy, the Criterium de Dauphiné, second overall in Tirreno Adriatico. It feels light to be designated as the leader of his team. Doesn't seem to put too much pressure on him at all.
It was actually a decision that was made at the end of last year when the Tour route was revealed. So, I mean, I've had a bit of time to adjust to it and get used to that responsibility. And it's been a really good experience for me this year, being able to go to the smaller races and be able to get used to that role and learn to work more with media, learn to engage more with the rest of the team also, not obviously being the leader, you have a lot more responsibilities from that point of view. So it is added pressure, but it's something I feel I've had a chance to adapt to this year already.
We learned a few days ago that Bradley will not be on the Tour. Does it make things easier for you or more complicated?
No, I mean it's unfortunate that he's not able to make it to the Tour because. Especially as last year's winner, I mean, you already have a very big presence if he is there, and he's definitely got a big engine that we could have used in the team time trial to help us get a faster time there, and then obviously in the mountains. I could have really done with him in the mountains to help me try and position myself in the best way possible to take on the other GC contenders. So. The fact that he's not there is, I think, not necessarily the best thing for the team.
And to be leader of the team and one of the main favourites for GC, does that mean that he'll have to change the way that he's been used to riding before?
I don't think I really have to change much about the way we ride the Tour. I think we already have quite a well-tested system, a drilled system that we use at Sky, which is probably a little bit more calculated, a bit more predictable, but it works for us, and I expect we'd use a very similar style of riding and ride within ourselves, definitely.
We have a Tour de France this year, which is kind of special, with first the start in Corsica, but also the two Alpe d'Huez. What do you think about it, and what do you think about less kilometer in time trial?
I feel I have a bit of an advantage on the other GC contenders in the time trial, so a bit more time trial would probably be even better for me. But I think this year's Tour is very well balanced. There are two individual time trials as well as a team time trial. So the time trials will have an impact on the race, but it won't be like last year, that it was a very deciding factor of the race. Having said that, we've got a lot of mountain stages, mountaintop finishes this year, so that's also going to be the battle for the GC in the mountains. So I think the winner of this year's Tour de France is going to have to be able to do both, to be able to time trial reasonably and to be able to climb very well with the best in the world also.
Do you think that maybe you can have a kind of alliance against you during this Tour de France?
It's definitely a possibility, and I felt a little bit like that in the Vuelta a España last year. That almost felt like the Spanish guys were riding against Sky, not necessarily against each other. And it's very possible we could find ourselves in the same situation this year at the Tour de France, but that's for the other teams to decide, and obviously we have our tactics in the race, and I'm sure other teams will have their own tactics, but there are definitely a lot of guys in the race for GC, so I'm quite sure it's not just going to be like one team against another team. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, after his suspension last year, the two-time Tour de France winner is back on the race. He's the only one in the current peloton to have won all three big tours. The last one was the Vuelta 2012, and even though he hasn't won much this season, he'll be ready. So first question, what does he think about the route? In Corsica, it'll be 3 stages, great tension, narrow roads, everyone will be aiming to be in front, and there's a scenario to lose time that'll be impossible to recover afterwards. But that's a situation we're used to. The first week is always key, and as the superstitious ones say, you just have to touch wood and hope that everything goes well for you.
Y lo que hay que a veces que hacer igual, como quien dice, es tocar madera.
Well, according to his team, Alberto's been focused on the Tour de France for a few months now, looking for every little detail which could be useful to him. It's such a huge effort and sacrifice to win, even despite you're never sure if you're able to win or not. Being a professional, you just try to anticipate and control all the factors that can lead you to victory. But once you've done all that, you still need to win to make it. I know I've done everything to be in perfect condition to obtain the goal, to have the reward of all the work put in, but I'm very much aware that even the smaller details now can sometimes make all the difference. Well, we all know Contador likes to attack, that's a fact, but as one of the main favourites, he'll have to adapt himself to the other contenders' tactics and maybe sometimes calculate a little bit more. Yeah, it's not just a battle against a rider, it's a battle against a team. For example, Sky's the dominating team, so from a tactical point of view, you have to adapt your racing in relation to the #1 competitive team. So race with your head, not to make any mistakes. Even millimetres sometimes against your main opponents matter. Personally, I like to attack, to do new things in terms of racing strategy, but the Tour de France is the #1 goal of my season. That's the reason why we're making so many sacrifices, and everything has to come out perfectly to succeed. I've done all the preparation I need to do, I've done the miles, I feel as if I'm coming to the Tour in perhaps the best condition that I've had for quite a few years now. So, what do you think of Chris Froome as your likely main opponent? Well, we'll have to see. He's coming from an unbelievable season, having great results, showing to be very solid both in the time trial and in the mountains. You look at his performances on the Dauphiné, you can tell he's worked massively to reach this level, and he will be, without any doubt, the toughest opponent to battle for the victory when we get to the end of the 3 weeks and we get towards the Champs-Élysées and that final stage of this 2013 Tour.
Como decía antes, ¿no? de estar aquí, yo creo que será el corredor igual un poquito más complicado, ¿no? Para luchar por la victoria.
I know he has respect for Chris, but Alberto's a nice guy who shows respect to everyone. Sometimes I feel a little bit too much. He's too nice. He gives his place to others in the peloton, and, well, that's just Alberto. Would you like him to be a bit more of a boss? Well, yeah, sometimes it would be better if he'd be a bit more incisive, more aggressive, and he must be more respected by the others. But, you know, you can't change the education and the upbringing and the true nature of the man, can you? Well, the German philosopher Nietzsche wrote, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." After all he's been through, does Alberto think the same way? Well, I like to see things from a different point of view, to see what's really important, to see the difference with what is not that important, giving a lot of value and importance for the happy moments and try to put the bad ones on the side and forget them. I like to have a different look at life and enjoy every single minute at the maximum possible level. If I can do that, then even if I don't win the Tour de France, I will still be a contented man when it's all done and dusted. That's the way I've always looked at my life. Well, that's it. It's time for the action. Well, almost anyway. Join us every day live on Eurosport from June the 29th to July the 21st and listen to the riders in this 100th Tour.